February 5th, 2008. A day that in any other year would probably have little significance in the long run, but for 2008 in the United States, it was a special day because it was Super Tuesday. For those out of the loop, Super Tuesday is the big primary election day where a bunch of states hold their primary elections to see which person will represent their respective party when the general election rolls around in November. Elections were in the mindsets of many Americans that February 5th, as they went out to go vote, go home, and wake up the next morning to see the results. Typical Super Tuesday behavior for those invested in politics. However, this Super Tuesday would be remembered years later not for what happened at the polls, but for what happened just outside of them. What occurred was one of the most unusual and anomalous severe weather events ever observed on this planet. A widespread, deadly tornado outbreak spanning primarily across Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, and Alabama had just occurred. For the second time in the history of the Storm Prediction Center's existence, when it was founded in 1995, a high risk was issued for severe weather for the month of February. On the north side, a severe winter storm that impacted the Central Plains through the Midwestern states of the United States. Despite having 5 EF4 tornadoes and numerous significant tornadoes that touched down from the 5th through the 6th of February in 2008, the Super Tuesday outbreak is one of the lesser-known winter tornado outbreaks to those in the general public. As many people think of the December 10th through the 11th outbreak from 2021 when talking about a wintertime tornado outbreak. However, the devastation the Super Tuesday outbreak brought to the people of the Tennessee Valley, Lower Ohio River Valley, and Dixie Alley warrants a deeper analysis on the outbreak, both on a meteorological level and what the storm system inflicted onto the people who were affected. Today, I will be going over the 2008 Super Tuesday Tornado Outbreak and Weather Complex, starting with a background of the severe weather activity that had already occurred so far, the origins of the outbreak, the synopsis, what the storm system did, the aftermath, and the storm's legacy. Welcome to Nature's Fury. So, in order to understand the background behind the absurdity of what had already occurred in the realm of severe weather in 2008, alongside why the Super Tuesday tornado outbreak was so unusual, I need to delve into the topics of how wintertime severe weather outbreaks work in comparison to springtime ones. The months of January and early February are the coldest months of the year on average in the Northern Hemisphere, climatologically speaking at least. So many areas are often hit by winter storms more so than severe weather. This doesn't mean that severe weather cannot occur in January and February. Far from it. When winter tornado outbreaks occur, they typically occur in the deep south, usually in southern Dixie Alley. There is a caveat to these winter severe weather outbreaks though, that being that they are often few and far between. Climatologically, winter in the southeastern United States is defined by cold and dry conditions. So even when storms move through, they are lacking two important factors for severe thunderstorm development: heat, which is needed to give air enough energy to rise through the atmosphere, and moisture, which is needed to actually begin to produce the thunderstorms themselves. With these two factors in limited supply during winter in the southeast, it's often rare to see severe weather occur in the winter months. In the case of 2008, two very unusual severe weather events had already occurred. From January 7th through the 11th, an unusually strong tornado outbreak sequence occurred in the Midwestern and Southern United States, spawning 72 tornadoes, with the majority of those tornadoes occurring on the 7th and 8th. On January 29th, a severe straight-line wind event occurred in the Lower Ohio River Valley, causing straight-line wind damage across the area. So even before February 5th, there were two unseasonably rare severe weather events for the year. Shortly after February began, another severe weather outbreak was about to commence, and would end up being one of the most well-known tornado outbreaks in the month of February. But real quick, only a small portion of the people who like these weather documentaries I make are subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content I create, consider subscribing. It helps me a lot and tells me I'm doing something right. Anyways, back to the Super Tuesday outbreak. Even before February 5th, a series of events was in progress that would allow for severe weather to occur. On February 3rd, a surface low-pressure system was beginning to develop near the Rocky Mountains, and to the east, a high-pressure system was developing over the eastern portion of the United States. These two systems created southerly flow from the Gulf of Mexico ahead of the cold front that would move across Arkansas and the Tennessee Valley. The southerly flow from the Gulf allowed for unseasonably warm and moist air to spread across the Deep South and the Tennessee Valley, with dew points in the 60s across many states in the Deep South, and temperatures in the upper 60s to the upper 70s. Further to the west of the Gulf states was a deep, upper-level trough that was expected to eject from the southern plains to the Gulf states. A low-level jet stream was expected to be established across the Gulf states and the Ohio River valleys, with winds in excess of 90 knots expected at the 500 millibar level. The low-level jet stream would provide an abundance of wind shear, the change of wind velocity over a short distance, and helicity, a measurement used to determine the potential for rotating winds in a thunderstorm. Both the wind shear and helicity favored supercell thunderstorms capable of producing strong, long-track tornadoes ahead of the main surface cold front. Helicity was abundant, with storm relative helicity values over 200 meters squared per second squared in some areas. CAPE was adequate for the event, with the northern portions of the states of Arkansas into portions of Tennessee having CAPE values of 500 joules per kilogram, with areas south having CAPE values of roughly 1,000 joules per kilogram. There was a cap, an area of stable warm air in the mid-levels of the atmosphere present across the Gulf states, and was expected to break, allowing for the rapid development of supercell thunderstorms in Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi. A surface low-pressure system would move into Arkansas with an associated cold front dragging to the south and west, and a warm front extending to the east and north. The area in between the warm front and the cold front is what is called a warm sector. The warm sector would allow for the supercell thunderstorms to persist for a longer period of time. Along the cold front, a strong line of thunderstorms was expected to develop and push through the Ohio River Valley and areas to the south. Eventually, the discrete supercells ahead of the cold front would be absorbed by the main line. The threat of severe weather further south in Alabama and central and southern Mississippi was also expected, but not to the severity of what was expected in Arkansas, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Keep what I just said in mind for later. The short version of what I just said is this. The environment in the central Gulf states was unseasonably unstable, with the expectation of discrete supercell thunderstorms forming ahead of a main line, with the cap breaking by mid-afternoon. If any supercell thunderstorm could form in this environment, it could produce a long-lived violent tornado. Signals for a potential severe weather event on February 5th were already evident nearly a week in advance. On January 31st, a Day 6 outlook from the Storm Prediction Center outlined a broad area in the southern United States indicating the potential for a severe weather event. As February 5th got closer, the SPC increased the area of potential impacts and the significance of the event, leading to a Day 2 moderate risk on February 4th for portions of Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Alabama. The day following, on February 5th, the moderate risk was held at the 6Z outlook, with the moderate risk being shrunk and further to the west. At 6:39 a.m. Central Standard Time, the Storm Prediction Center issued a high risk for Arkansas, a small portion of southwest Tennessee, and northwest Mississippi. As the day progressed, the high risk would be extended into more of Tennessee and portions of Kentucky, Illinois, and Missouri. Going over the categorical outlook in depth, the high risk was issued for a 30% chance of a tornado within 25 miles of a given point, within a larger hatched area which included the 15% TOR parameter within the moderate. The hatched area marking a 10% or greater probability of a significant EF2+ tornado. The possibility of severe wind gusts from the thunderstorms was also a cause for concern, with the moderate risk seeing a 45% chance of observing wind gusts of 60 miles per hour or higher, with a hatched area seeing a 10% or greater probability of wind gusts of hurricane force. Hail was not a primary threat, but still a cause for concern, with a 30% hail risk being issued for the possibility of 1-inch hail or greater in an area mainly over Arkansas. As the SPC issued their outlooks, they were already coordinating with local National Weather Service offices to prepare for what could be a potentially long day on February 5th. But for meteorologists, there were two concerns about how far and how well the message itself would be taken, due to two reasons both relating to the timing of the event. The first and most obvious reason was the timing of this being a significant weather event occurring in the winter months. Studies have shown that people tend to not take severe weather events in the winter as seriously as they would in the spring, because when most people think of winter, they do not think of tornadoes. Because the Super Tuesday outbreak was occurring in February, that meant that there could be possible fatalities due to a lack of weather awareness. The second reason was the date, February 5th. It was Super Tuesday. The primary elections that day were going to be covered extensively on both local and national television, so there was a concern for whether or not the severe weather would get the coverage it needed to warn the public. Not to mention that if severe weather started before it was expected to, that there would be portions of the population out voting, specifically in Arkansas and Tennessee, and that could be an issue regarding the populace searching for shelter. Thankfully, the cap took longer than expected to break, and the majority of the tornadoes occurred after the polls had closed. Areas north of the severe weather from Missouri to Wisconsin and Michigan were expecting a major winter storm from the same storm complex, with bitter Arctic air coming from behind the storm system. With the stage set, February 5th came, and the events began to unfold. In the morning hours of the 5th, temperatures were already beginning to reach into the 60s, and by 12 p.m., all states south of the Tennessee-Kentucky border had temperatures into the 70s. Moisture was abundant, with dew points into the 60s in Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky. The unseasonably high dew points would stay in place until the storm complex would move through. What was also apparent was a dry line setup beginning to take place in Oklahoma into Texas during the early morning hours, where the squall line that would move through the high-risk area and cannibalize discrete supercells later in the day would begin forming. As the morning progressed, the squall line continued to grow in size as it moved eastward. At 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, the first weather watch out of 16 that would be issued during the event was issued. At 2:10 p.m., the SPC issued a particularly dangerous situation, or PDS for short, tornado watch for most of the state of Arkansas and portions of northern Louisiana. An hour later, another PDS tornado watch was issued for portions of eastern Arkansas, north and central Mississippi, western Tennessee, southeastern Missouri, southern Illinois, far southwestern Indiana, and western Kentucky. These watches were issued with the expectation of numerous supercell thunderstorms forming in the area ahead of the cold front in the warm sector once the cap breaks. However, the issue came down to when the cap would break. It became evident as the afternoon rolled in and the cap was still in place. As it turns out, it was taking longer to break than expected, keeping supercells from being able to grow. This, however, only brought a temporary sigh of relief as the cap was still gradually being eroded away, meaning supercells would not have to wait much longer to begin to fire across the area. As the surface low and the cold front moved closer towards Arkansas, the low-level jet began to align with the open warm sector that was in place, providing ample wind shear and helicity that supercell thunderstorms could take advantage of. By 3:30 p.m., the cap finally broke, and supercell thunderstorms began forming in the open warm sector. One of the first supercell thunderstorms that formed that day began in Arkansas and would go on to drop the longest track tornado in the state's history. Shortly after 4:50 p.m. Central Standard Time, one of the longest tracking supercell thunderstorms that day produced a tornado in Yale County, Arkansas. The tornado was initially weak, only producing minor tree damage in the county. However, the tornado began to intensify as it moved into Pope County, Arkansas, producing EF3 damage in the city of Atkins. The tornado continued to produce EF3 damage as it moved into Conway County, destroying 32 residences, with 6 other residences suffering major damage. As the tornado moved into Van Buren County, the tornado produced its worst damage, leading to its rating of EF4. The tornado destroyed 41 houses, and numerous houses and businesses were damaged. The tornado continued into Stone County, destroying 24 houses and a car dealership, with cars on the sales lot being thrown across the highway. After moving through Stone County, the tornado produced EF3 damage, destroying 43 residences in Izard County and 30 houses in Sharp County. After moving out of Sharp County, at least 40 businesses were damaged or destroyed along US Highway 62, as well as a church. The tornado would then lift just to the northeast of Highland, Arkansas. In all, the tornado traveled 122 miles total, with a peak width of 3/4 of a mile wide. killing 13, injuring 140, and causing $119 million in damages. At 5:32 p.m., a multi-vortex tornado touched down in South Haven, Mississippi, striking the high school nearby, thankfully only causing EF0 damage. Crossing the State Line Road and Airways Boulevard intersection, the tornado quickly strengthened and began producing EF2 damage. The tornado maintained its intensity as it crossed the Mississippi-Tennessee state line, aiming straight for the southeastern portions of Memphis, Tennessee. As the tornado moved into Tennessee, news station WREG caught the tornado on Skycam. At this point, the National Weather Service in Memphis, Tennessee issued a tornado emergency for the first time in their forecast area since the term was used back in 1999 for the Moore, Oklahoma F5 tornado. The tornado produced extensive damage as it moved through the southeastern suburbs of Memphis. Damage was done to several warehouses, multiple homes suffered major damage, and the tornado caused a wall to collapse at a Sears department store. The tornado then struck a Taco Bell along Winchester Road before lifting. The tornado was on the ground for a little over 8 miles, causing $128 million in damages, killing 3 and injuring 13. Just under an hour after the tornado near Memphis, Tennessee lifted, the same supercell would drop another tornado near the rural community of Yum Yum, Tennessee, quickly reaching EF3 intensity. The tornado quickly destroyed a shed and tossed a truck 40 feet, severely damaging the truck and killing the man inside. The tornado traveled into Fayette County, producing EF2 damage in Dancyville, Tennessee, with 2 mobile homes being destroyed and 1 house suffering major damage. The tornado then crossed into Madison County, producing EF3 damage in the town of Huntersville, destroying 2 houses in the town and damaging several others. This tornado was found to have been at least a third of a mile wide, traveled 31 miles, caused $10.3 million in damages, injured 14, and claimed the lives of 3. The tornado would then lift northeast of Huntersville near Interstate 40, only for the supercell thunderstorm to quickly cycle and produce another tornado 5 minutes later, touching down directly over the Union University campus in Jackson, Tennessee. Despite being on the ground for only mere moments at this point, the tornado was already intense. The university received EF4 damage, with 2 dormitories collapsing as the tornado passed through the campus. 80% of the college dormitories were severely damaged or destroyed. The tornado caused major damage to 3 academic buildings and caused damage to 14 other college buildings. The wind speeds were estimated to be 170 miles per hour at the college campus, yet the tornado itself was only 125 yards wide. The tornado then tracked across US Highway 45, striking multiple subdivisions, continuing to move towards the northeast while causing EF3 damage. After crossing the intersection of Christmasville Road and Ashport Road, the tornado would lift. The tornado itself was on the ground for less than 10 minutes and only traveled about 7.6 miles. However, the tornado caused some of the worst damage from the outbreak, specifically at Union University. Thankfully, the EF4 tornado did not cause any fatalities, but the tornado injured 51 people. A separate supercell that had a history of producing multiple smaller tornadoes in northern Mississippi and southern Tennessee dropped its most powerful tornado west of the Tennessee River in Hardin County at roughly 7:40 p.m. The tornado quickly began to race to the northeast, causing EF4 damage, impacting the Oak Grove, Cerro Gordo, and Swift communities. The tornado destroyed 59 houses, 11 mobile homes, 11 public buildings, and 11 farm buildings, with another 117 buildings receiving some form of damage. 4 of the 11 public buildings belong to the Sharon Baptist Church, which lost its sanctuary, preschool, academy, and student center off Cravens Road in the Oak Grove area. The tornado continued moving northeast before lifting near the Highway 114 and 128 intersection. The tornado was on the ground for 17 minutes with maximum winds of at least 170 miles per hour, traveling on the ground for about 16 miles total, with a maximum width of half a mile. The tornado caused $17.6 million in damages, injuring 5 and killing 3. However, the tornadic supercell would continue to produce multiple tornadoes, 2 EF1s, then an EF2 tornado that seemed to take a direct aim at Nashville, one of the largest cities in the state of Tennessee. Thankfully, the tornado lifted before hitting Nashville proper, although witnesses claimed to observe a funnel cloud over the city at one point or another. Just after 10 p.m., the supercell would drop another tornado, This time, a long-track EF3 tornado that formed southwest of Castalian Springs in Sumner County in Tennessee. The tornado rapidly intensified and began producing EF3 damage after going through Castalian Springs, completely destroying the post office alongside 85 different houses in the area. In Sumner County alone, there were 7 direct deaths. The tornado continued into Trousdale County, causing EF2 damage. The tornado ripped through a gas plant, which caused a gas leak and subsequent fire at the Columbia Gulf Transmission Company, with the fire itself burning itself out. The tornado destroyed 10 homes in the county, with 23 homes having major damage, causing 2 fatalities before crossing the county line. The tornado continued into Macon County, with the majority of the damage occurring in Williams, northwest of Lafayette, Tennessee, destroying 170 homes, killing 13 people alone in the county. From this point, the tornado then traveled into Monroe County, Kentucky, destroying 2 conventional homes and 2 mobile homes and damaging several others. The tornado moved into Cumberland County and then lifted shortly thereafter 3 miles southwest of Marrowbone. This singular tornado is the deadliest tornado from the outbreak, killing a total of 22 people directly, injuring 63, causing nearly $29 million in damages, and traveling a length of 50 miles with a maximum width of nearly half a mile wide. Further to the northwest, a supercell with a history of producing tornadoes was cycling after spawning an EF2 tornado north of Hopkinsville, Kentucky. It didn't take long before it produced an EF3 tornado at 7:44 p.m. in southern Muhlenberg County. The tornado would go on to pass directly through Central City, Kentucky. In the tornado's path, a total of 69 homes were destroyed and 203 were damaged, with most of the damage occurring in the communities of Greenville and Powderly. Half a dozen businesses and churches were damaged. The tornado passed within a short distance of a high school, with a large portion of the gym roof being damaged. The tornado then lifted on the Muhlenberg-Ohio County line. The tornado traveled a little over 18 miles, with a maximum width of 1/5 of a mile. In total, the tornado caused $21 million in damages, killing 3 and injuring 24. As midnight passed, it seemed like the main threat was over. The majority of the supercells that formed in Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas had begun to form into a squall line of sorts for the state of Kentucky. Then shortly after 1 a.m., the squall line that initially formed in Oklahoma had reached the Alabama-Mississippi state line. Then, a second round of supercell thunderstorms started forming ahead of the line. These supercells would be responsible for 2 additional EF4s associated with the Super Tuesday outbreak. A supercell that produced an EF0 tornado to the east of Sullivan, Alabama, produced a violent EF4 tornado at 3 a.m. near Pinhook, Alabama. The tornado moved towards the northeast, causing significant damage along its path. National Weather Service Huntersville issued a tornado emergency for Decatur, Alabama, after receiving reports from spotters of a dangerous tornado being on the ground. The tornado lifted before reaching Decatur, Alabama. In total, 4 people were killed and 23 were injured. The last significant tornado of the outbreak touched down at 5:17 in the morning in Jackson County, Alabama. The tornado traveled across Jackson County over the course of 12 minutes, causing EF4 damage along its path, with the worst of the damage being in between the communities of Rosali and Pisgah. The tornado traveled a total of almost 11 miles, with winds of 180 miles per hour and a peak width of 660 yards. In total, 1 person was killed and 12 people were injured. At this point, the supercells began to die off as the squall line caught up and absorbed the supercells into the main line. On February 6th, a slight risk was issued for portions of the eastern United States from the Florida Panhandle all the way north to Pennsylvania. No tornadoes were reported during the daytime hours of the 6th, with the majority of the damage reports being related to strong winds. Looking outside the tornadoes themselves, there was still the threat of damaging winds and large hail. While extremely large hail wasn't expected, there were many reports of hail with sizes up to 4 inches in diameter. The squall line brought very strong winds with it, with the highest wind gust being 82 miles per hour in Terre Haute, Indiana. The northern side of the storm complex brought a very powerful winter storm that brought heavy snowfall to parts of the Central Plains and the western Great Lakes. Many areas got over 10 inches of winter accumulation between eastern Ohio and into Canada, with isolated amounts of 21 inches of snow in portions of Wisconsin. The winter storm itself canceled numerous flights, shut down some airports, and stranded vehicles along roadways. Typical winter storm shenanigans. But as the sun rose across the southeastern United States, with the bitter Arctic air fresh in the area, clearer images of the devastation the tornadoes brought from the day before started to come out. Those images showcased some of the worst damage observed from a tornado outbreak in the month of February. What many meteorologists feared was the worst-case scenario had just occurred. Numerous supercell thunderstorms produced strong tornadoes, with some violent long-track tornadoes occurring in Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Kentucky. Additionally, there were 2 violent tornadoes in portions of Alabama, an area that was not expected to see violent tornadoes from the outbreak. In total, 87 tornadoes touched down across multiple states. Of those, there were 31 EF0s, 30 EF1s, 16 EF2s, 5 EF3s, and 5 EF4s. The 2008 Super Tuesday Outbreak became the largest outbreak in the month of February, alongside holding the record for the most EF4 tornadoes from an outbreak in the month of February. Numerous people were left without a place to live across the lower Ohio River Valley southward. The worst damage observed from the outbreak was where the 5 EF4 tornadoes touched down and tracked. In Arkansas, an image of a Jeep being impaled into a tree, numerous structures in Atkins being obliterated, with a couple fires burning the day after. In Van Buren County near Clinton, Arkansas, a boat plant was completely destroyed. Trails of nothing but debris everywhere, and multiple houses just ripped off from their foundations. Damage was reported at the Memphis International Airport, and the FedEx services in the area got delayed due to the damage around the airport. Some of the worst damage from the outbreak was observed from the Jackson, Tennessee tornado family, specifically at Union University. 2 dormitory buildings were just destroyed entirely from the tornado, and numerous other dormitories suffered severe damage. The tornado family that impacted Tennessee and Kentucky annihilated a church and multiple buildings when an EF4 tornado moved north of Savannah, Tennessee, with the EF3 tornado that was part of the family being the deadliest tornado of the outbreak, killing 22 people. The damage that was seen in Alabama from the 2 EF4 tornadoes was very similar to what had already been seen in Tennessee and Arkansas, with multiple houses being utterly destroyed, leaving those who got hit left with nothing. In total, 57 people died from the tornado outbreak, making the 2008 Super Tuesday outbreak the deadliest tornado outbreak at that time since 1985. Many of those who passed away didn't have access to a sturdy shelter for this situation. However, there were stories of success regarding saving the lives of many people during the outbreak. At the Memphis International Airport, the Memphis Central Weather Service Unit, which is part of the NWS within the Federal Aviation Administration, was key in predicting the timeline of events regarding the outbreak for the airport. The air traffic controllers noted that the CWSU guys were dead on. We would be blind without them. The Memphis CWSU used a commercial radar display program, which helped in discerning storm structure to better communicate with the airport. Members of the Memphis International Airport CWSU stayed past their normal hours for the event. Also in Memphis, the Memphis City School District dismissed schools early after an administrator looked at the NWS Memphis website and consulted with Shelby County Emergency Management. Schools began dismissing at 12:30 p.m. when the skies were clear, which led to some criticism. However, it was emphasized that the district had 115,000 students, and mobilizing the buses would take 1.5 hours. If the school system had not released early, the buses would have been on the road right as the storms were going on, including the EF2 that went through the southeastern suburbs. The possible issue regarding coverage of the event due to the primaries seemed to not be an issue in the end. Local stations were going on air with wall-to-wall coverage for the storms that day, despite the Super Tuesday primary election results that were coming in that night. Nobody died from the Jackson, Tennessee tornado, with those who survived at Union University crediting the weather forecast being accurate and the university's efforts to keep students informed of the severe weather threat that day and to ensure that proper safety precautions were taken. The university was aware of the threat throughout the day, saving lives in the process. When the EF3 tornado in Muhlenberg County, Kentucky occurred, a basketball game had just finished at North High School in the county, which had just received a tornado warning at 7:32 p.m. 1,200 people were in attendance in the school gymnasium for the basketball game. Based on the warning information, a decision was made to shelter in place and prevent anyone from leaving the school premises. The school got hit 20 minutes later, and every tree around the school was uprooted, with a 30 by 30 section of the gym roof being peeled back. Batting cages were thrown into buses, and a scoreboard was found in the parking lot. By the time the tornado left, there were some injuries, but nobody in the school premises died that night. The school's actions, which were based on warning information from NWS Paducah, likely saved dozens of lives. These small actions may seem routine to many people. However, without these critical, crunch-time decisions, there likely would have been way more casualties. On the topic of the National Weather Service, this was the first major outbreak where the polygon warning system that just got implemented was used. How the system used to work is that when warnings were issued, such as a tornado warning or a severe thunderstorm warning, they would be issued for whole counties. The county-based warning system did create problems, however. There were some issues that were addressed by this outbreak related to the system, but regardless, nothing major. A total of 5 tornado emergencies were issued, 4 in Tennessee and 1 in Alabama, a record at the time for the highest number of tornado emergencies issued in a single tornado outbreak. However, NWS Little Rock never issued a tornado emergency because they thought that the tornado emergency tag was only supposed to be used for when violent tornadoes hit populated areas. There was no clear guidance on when to issue those tornado emergencies at this point. But to sum up the whole storm system itself, over $1 billion in damages was done in total, accounting for both the tornado outbreak and the winter storm further north. 58 people died due to the tornado outbreak. 4 others died from the winter storm. Hundreds were injured, and numerous records were broken in terms of tornadoes. Anyways, let's start to bring this to a close. The 2008 Super Tuesday Tornado Outbreak is a tornado outbreak that isn't often remembered by many outside of those in the weather space, and to be honest, it isn't that well documented. I say that based on the utter lack of footage that I could find on the event itself. However, despite that, the Super Tuesday Tornado Outbreak remains as one of the most impressive outbreaks I've ever researched. With 87 tornadoes, 5 of those being EF4s, the longest track tornado in Arkansas state history, there's a lot of interesting things about this outbreak that warrant it being talked about more, especially when 2 of those EF4s happened in the slight risk. A quite interesting statistic is how the Arkansas EF4 compared to the other 4 EF4s of the outbreak. The Arkansas EF4 had a path length of around 120 miles. It was on the ground for more than double the path lengths of the other EF4 tornadoes combined. Just goes to show that a tornado does not have to be on the ground for very long to cause extreme levels of damage. Regardless, the impacts from this outbreak will forever be remembered by those who lost family members or their homes for the rest of time. However, thanks to the actions of public officials, those who worked for the National Weather Service, those who worked for Union University, those at North High School in Kentucky, along with likely countless other small acts of kindness, many lives that may have been lost from this outbreak were able to be saved. If it weren't for the work of ordinary citizens and government officials alike, this outbreak could have been way worse and way deadlier. The Super Tuesday Outbreak is one of 2 tornado outbreaks that are often brought up when people mention wintertime tornado outbreaks. In fact, synoptically, the 2 outbreaks are quite similar regarding the setup, except the other outbreak is further to the west and there was more cape. The other outbreak is...
Oh my god, he's finally covering Mayfield after all this time! My favorite weather boy is gonna cover the most amazing tornado outbreak of all the times!
The other one being the December 10th through the 11th tornado outbreak, which I will be covering next time. The 2008 Super Tuesday Tornado Outbreak may be overshadowed by other wintertime tornado outbreaks, but its legacy for those in Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Alabama cannot be forgotten anytime soon. Yes, I'm doing December 10th next. Can you stop commenting about it? I've been really hesitant because it seems like everyone and their mother is making a documentary on December 10th, but due to two reasons, I'm finally doing it. First is that I'm only doing this before Joplin because Dr. Fawn has yet to respond to me, and I needed a video for early September. The other and more important reason is that I managed to get an interview with Richard Thompson, a lead forecaster for the Storm Prediction Center who issued the Day 1 moderate risk for December 10th, which happened just last week. The interview itself was something I am really proud of, and he has a lot of important points to make about December 10th and the state of weather messaging in the age of social media that was related to the event. After that, I may release a video on Joplin, but depending on how my school schedule is, even with 3 classes, it may end up that I jump straight into Sandy. After the December 10th video, I will make an announcement regarding interviews because that's where all of you guys come in. Special thanks to the following people: Reed Timmer for giving me permission to use his footage for this retrospective, Nicholas for providing me with radar footage, my proofreaders which include Rishi and Alice, Devin for doing the really funny voice near the end, and all of you for watching and supporting the channel. Special thanks to the people who are subscribed to my Patreon, including Montiplier on the Alfie's Army tier, and Avery Toyota on the Elf Mini tier. God, I hope I pronounced those right. For those who are interested in getting extra perks like access to all my scripts and video making tutorials and whatnot whenever I create them, link to that is in the description. Since I last uploaded a video, the channel banner has been finished. I cannot stop praising Celtic White, please follow them on Twitter. By the time this goes up, I will be getting character stills that'll be used whenever I go on my little soapbox rants that I occasionally go on, which trust me, that'll be very necessary for the December 10th video. If you enjoy what I do, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share it around, all that jazz. It helps me a lot and tells me I'm doing something right. With that all being said, I'm Alferia, make sure to stay safe out there, and until next time, you all have a good one.